I used to look at wrinkles and dark spots as nothing more than natural stamps of time, until I sat with patient after patient who believed the same, and then wondered why their bodies felt older than their years. That is the silent risk. What you see on your face is not a harmless surface change. It is the skin whispering about the pace of aging within. Let me tell you why this matters. I have learned over decades of practice that skin is not a shield of stone. It is a living organ that reacts to the way we eat, the way we rest, and the way we meet the sun. Research in the United States has shown that more than 80% of visible aging is not dictated by the calendar, but by preventable factors such as unprotected light and poor daily choices. That is both the good news and the caution. The good news is that you have far more control than you think, because your face is a dashboard of habits rather than a fixed verdict. The caution is that no cream and no shortcut will undo years of neglect overnight. The strength of this approach is that it puts the power back in your hands with safe, affordable steps anyone can try. The limitation is that it requires patience and intention, because biology responds to steady care, not quick fixes. Yet I have witnessed men and women in their 70s and even their 80s soften deep lines, fade stubborn spots, and discover a glow they thought was gone, simply by changing how they greeted the morning and how they prepared their nights. If you carry only one thought with you today, let it be this: your skin is not finished, it is listening. Offer it better signals, and it will reflect better stories each time you look in the mirror. Tonight I will guide you through the first ritual that sets your repair clock in motion. Then together we will explore nourishment from within, and finally, we will restore what the day has taken away while you sleep. This is not a promise of miracles. It is an invitation to a different kind of hope, one that grows line by line into a face that feels like your own again. When people talk about skin aging, they almost always picture it as a clock you cannot stop once you pass 60. But after decades of listening to patients and watching their lives unfold, I can tell you that the clock is not the only hand at work. The skin is more honest than most of us realize. It carries the marks not only of time, but of the choices we make every single day. And that is both unsettling and empowering. Research from respected dermatology journals in the United States has shown that more than 80% of visible aging is tied not to your birthday candles, but to habits like stepping into harsh sunlight without protection, eating food that starves collagen, or living under constant stress. That statistic should shake you, because it means what many accept as destiny may in fact be the result of years of small oversights. The strength of knowing this is enormous, because it returns control to you. You are not doomed to lines and spots simply because of your age. You can influence the way your skin looks and feels. The limitation is just as clear. This is not magic. It is medicine in the form of steady habits. And without practice, even the best knowledge will not change a single wrinkle. I want you to stay with me through this journey, because we will move beyond creams and promises into 3 living rituals that respect your biology. First, we will greet the morning sun in a way that sets the repair clock instead of breaking it. Then, we will nourish from within, so the scaffolding under the skin can hold firm. Finally, we will use the night, not as an ending, but as the greatest opportunity for renewal. That is the map, and it begins now with a truth too many overlook. Your skin is not a passive victim of time. It is an active partner waiting for the right signals. I cannot tell you how many times I have sat across from someone in their 60s or 70s who whispered to me that they had tried every cream on the shelf, some costing more than a week's groceries, and still felt invisible when they looked in the mirror. That is the quiet heartbreak I hear again and again. The surface may look moisturized for a few hours, but the deeper hunger of the skin remains untouched. On the outside, you feel like you are taking action. You dab something on before bed and you hope. But inside, the collagen stays brittle, the oxygen flow stays low, and the repair signals never come. The advantage of these surface fixes is speed. You can buy them, apply them, and believe you are helping. The limitation is sobering. They cannot nourish. They cannot rebuild. They cannot teach the skin to remember how to heal. And so the pattern repeats. Buy, apply, despair. I have watched good people waste not only money, but also faith in their own ability to change. That is why I tell them the mirror is honest but misunderstood. It reflects the inside more than the jar on the counter. If you want the lines to soften and the glow to return, you must learn the language of the skin, and that language begins beneath the surface. I urge you tonight to open your cabinet and count the bottles that promise miracles without ever asking about your dinner plate or the way you sleep. That little act of awareness is the first step away from disappointment and toward real renewal. For so long I listened to men and women sigh and tell me that their sagging skin was written into their DNA, as if every wrinkle had been carved into them by fate. And I remember feeling the urge to stop them right there. Because what I have witnessed in decades of practice is that so much of what people call destiny is nothing more than the echo of hidden habits. When your body is starved of oxygen, when your collagen is slowly frayed by sugar and stress, when your skin cells no longer know when to rest or repair because light arrives at the wrong hours, the face begins to carry marks that feel permanent. Yet those marks are not laws, they are messages. The one advantage of calling it destiny is that it frees you from blame. You can tell yourself it was going to happen no matter what, but the terrible cost of that belief is that it steals the very chance to slow the decline, to turn even small choices into visible renewal. I have watched patients give up too early because they thought they were powerless, when in truth, they had far more influence than they realized. This is why I remind them that the mirror is not a judge. It does not punish you. It translates your daily life into a visible script. And if you change the language, you can change the reflection. Tonight, when you pass by your mirror, I invite you not to count the lines, but to ask a new question. What habits are speaking through my skin, and which of them can I choose to quiet? That single shift in thinking can be the first crack in the myth of fate, and the first step toward repair. The very first ritual I teach every senior who sits with me is about light, because the skin is far more than a surface. It is a living clock that tells time by the sun. I remember one patient in her late 60s who believed she had inherited her dark spots from her mother. Yet what I discovered was that she spent hours in the garden at noon without a hat or protection. The irony is that the same sun she trusted for health was quietly accelerating the lines on her face. Here is the paradox you must hear. A short meeting with the soft light of morning, no more than 10 or 15 minutes, can awaken the repair cycle of your skin, synchronize your internal clock, and even help you sleep better at night. But the same rays at noon or mid-afternoon, when they strike without shield, can shred collagen, trigger pigment, and carve deep marks that seem permanent. The strength of sunlight is that it is a healer, freely available to every one of us, fueling vitamin D and setting rhythms that no pill can replace. The limitation is that sunlight is also a destroyer when taken in the wrong dose, and too many discover that truth only after decades of damage. I often compare it to a prescription drug. The right dose heals, the wrong timing poisons. Tomorrow morning, I invite you to step outside or simply sit by a bright window to greet the early day, and then choose shade, a hat, or a gentle mineral sunscreen once the hours grow harsh. That simple shift can be the first stitch in repairing what you thought was only fate. It is proof that even light itself listens to how and when you invite it in. I will never forget the afternoon. An 80-year-old gardener sat in my office, his face tanned and lined from decades under the midday sun. He chuckled as if it were nothing, then unbuttoned his collar and revealed a strip of skin that looked decades younger, smooth and even, hidden all those years beneath fabric. I remember staring at the contrast. The same man, the same age, yet two skins as different as father and son, divided only by exposure. That picture has stayed in my mind ever since because it tells the story better than any textbook. The strength of this lesson is that it proves aging on the surface is not written solely by the calendar, but by how we meet the light. If one part of the body can remain youthful while another part grows old, then choice matters more than fate. The limitation, and it is important to accept this, is that decades of damage cannot be undone overnight. Skin has memory, and scars of neglect do not vanish in a week, but they can soften with new rhythms of care. I share this story so you will begin to see your own hidden comparisons. Look at the skin under your sleeve, beneath your hairline, or at the places that rarely meet the sun, and notice how different they feel from the areas that are exposed. That contrast is your teacher. Let it remind you that you have more control than you may believe. Tomorrow, when you prepare to step outside, remember the gardener and decide whether you want your reflection to carry the marks of harsh rays or the resilience of protection. That single decision, repeated day after day, can write a different story on your face. The second ritual I share with everyone who asks me how to slow the marks of age is nourishment, because the skin is not a mask you paint from the outside. It is living tissue that eats and breathes from the inside. I remember a woman in her 70s who told me with pride that she had never missed a night of applying her cream, yet her face remained fragile and spotted. When I asked about her meals, she admitted that dinner often meant white bread and sweet coffee. That was the missing piece. Every bite is a message. Sugar stiffens collagen like glue poured over delicate springs, while protein and vitamin C rebuild those springs and allow the face to stay resilient. The advantage of focusing on food is that it is in your hands 3 times a day, and changes can appear faster than many expect, sometimes within weeks, because the body responds when it finally receives what it has been missing. The limitation is sobering. The same plate can either heal or harm, and no cream, no matter how expensive, can undo the inflammation of a diet rich in sugar and poor in nutrients. That is why I often say your reflection is as much a picture of your kitchen as it is of your mirror. If you want to see smoother lines, begin by asking what sits on your plate tonight. Swap one sweet for a piece of citrus, add a serving of fish or beans, and watch what your face tells you in return. Even a small shift in dinner can whisper change by morning. I remember 2 women who came to me only weeks apart, both in their 70s, both troubled by the lines that deepened each year. The first clung to the comfort of sweet coffee in the morning, fried foods at lunch, and a small dessert each night. She told me it was her joy, yet the mirror showed a cost she could no longer ignore. The second made a quieter set of choices: fish a few nights a week, steamed greens, and a pot of green tea she sipped slowly each afternoon. When I saw her again after only a few weeks, her face had softened, her skin looked brighter, and she carried herself with a confidence that was new. The advantage of nourishing food is that the body responds almost immediately. Collagen begins to rebuild, inflammation calms, and the skin shows it. The limitation is that harmful food works just as quickly in the opposite direction. Sugar stiffens, salt drains, fried oils inflame, and the punishment writes itself on the face. That is why I often tell my patients that the mirror is the fastest report card you will ever receive. It reflects your plate in real time. Tonight, when you prepare your meal, pause for a moment and ask yourself whether your plate belongs to the first story or the second. That simple act of choosing can tip the balance of weeks and years ahead, and in that choice lies the power to change the story your skin tells. The third ritual I teach is restoration, and it belongs to the night. For years, I watched patients complain that their creams were not working. Yet when I asked about their evenings, I heard stories of heavy dinners, late drinks, and hours spent under bright screens. What they did not realize is that the skin is not idle while you sleep. It is at its most active, repairing DNA, building collagen, and washing away the stress of the day. The advantage is extraordinary because these hours cost nothing. You are already in bed, and your body is ready to heal if you let it. The limitation is that many unknowingly sabotage this gift. A slice of cake before bed, a glass too many, or scrolling until midnight sends signals of stress instead of rest, and the repair cycle is interrupted. I tell my patients to think of the night as the shift change in a hospital, the day staff leaves, and the repair crew comes in. If you keep the lights blazing and the halls noisy, the crew cannot do its work. But dim the lights, quiet the room, and offer the skin a gentle cream or nourishing touch, and the night becomes your most powerful treatment. Tonight, I invite you to see the hours before bed not as the closing of a day, but as the opening of recovery. Treat them with the respect you would give a prescription, because the choices you make in that window decide whether you wake older or renewed. One of the most powerful tools I have ever placed in a patient's hands was not a jar from the pharmacy, but a recipe from the kitchen. I remember an older woman who had nearly given up after spending a small fortune on products that promised miracles. When I showed her how to soak a handful of almonds, blend them into a soft milk, add a thread of saffron for brightness, stir in aloe gel for calm, and finish with a drop of rice bran oil for strength, she laughed and said it felt more like cooking than medicine. Yet within weeks, her skin was softer, her spots lighter, and more importantly, her confidence returned because she knew the remedy came from her own hands. The strength of this kind of cream is that it works with the skin rather than against it. It hydrates, soothes inflammation, and brings a natural glow without the rebound damage of harsh chemicals. The limitation is that it is not instant. It demands patience, regular use, and a willingness to adjust ingredients to your own body. For those who cannot use almonds, oat milk offers a gentle substitute, and if saffron is rare, a green tea infusion can serve the same role. The point is not perfection, but principle. Natural ingredients timed with the body's repair rhythm create harmony instead of conflict. Tonight, I encourage you to prepare even a small jar and try it for yourself. There is a special kind of healing in touching your own skin with something you created. A quiet reminder that your health is not sold on a shelf. It can be nurtured in your own home. I cannot count the times I have sat with a man or woman who sighed and told me it was too late for them, that their skin had gone too far or their years were too heavy. And yet, I have watched faces transform and spirits lift in people well into their 70s and even their 80s. The beauty of these rituals is that they do more than soften lines or fade spots. They restore something deeper, the quiet belief that change is still possible. The advantage is simple but profound. Age does not lock the door. You can begin at 60, 70, or beyond, and your body will answer. The limitation is just as true. None of this matters if you never take the first step. The mirror will not change without your hand guiding it. I remember one man in his late 70s who told me that when his skin began to heal, he finally believed the rest of him could heal too. That shift in his words stayed with me, because it showed me that what we see on the surface often gives us permission to hope inside. Tonight, I want you to remember that the night itself holds a choice. It can rush you toward faster aging, or it can become your most powerful ally in renewal. The decision is yours each evening, and in that choice lies the difference between despair and discovery. I invite you now to share your age in the comments and declare that you are ready to begin, because it is never too late to turn a single change into a new chapter of health and confidence.